Hi, I'm Benita.
Hi, I am Shumon.
So today we have Maria with us, who is going to interpret from Russian to English for us. Maria works as an interpreter for once or twice a week for workshops. And finally, we have Alexandra with us. Alexandra is a web developer who have created SciHub, and she's a native speaker of Russian. She knows English very well and some German and ancient languages. She's interested in neuro and cognitive sciences and theories of knowledge. She has participated in research projects and developed algorithms of neural signals and processing.
She is interested in thinking how communication between neurons goes so that it flourishes into subjective experience and how to connect different neural networks for immediate information transfer. SciHub is a small step towards this goal, making research communication faster. She's also interested in information in religion and cultural perspectives. She has a bachelor's degree in computer technology and a master's degree in linguistics. We are really excited to have you with us today.
Very nice to see you all here.
Thank you. Now we would like Alexandra to tell something about her project.
So SciHub is an online portal where you can read and gain access to scientific literature for free, literature which is normally sold for large sums of money.
So today we would like to know Alexandra as she is, rather than the girl who invented SciHub. So what is your story of falling in love with science?
So in fact, when I was very little, I think I was around 6 or 7, my mom gave me a book which was called The Mysteries of Nature. And so also back in the day, dinosaurs were very popular. They were everywhere on TV. There was toys being sold of dinosaurs. And I asked my mom to buy me something associated with them, and she bought me an encyclopedia, and it was like more or less a scientific book. So it told us about the evolution of dinosaurs, about how where they came from.
Oh, that's exciting. That's interesting. I don't think we knew about this part.
So Alexandra, after reading encyclopedia, how was it? What did you wanted to become as a child? Like, was it always this clear that you want to become a scientist? Like, you want to go for science?
So although the books were on science, nowhere in the book did it say that it is a profession and that there are people who actually do science for a living. So up until, I guess, my school graduation, high school graduation, I wasn't even aware that there are people who study the world and investigate, explore the world as their profession. When we were given the task to write an essay on who we would like to be in the future back at school, I wrote at first that I would like to go into programming, just the same way as my mother did.
Wonderful. So we do know the story behind how you came up with SciHub from the other interviews, but what we do not know is what is the story behind how the philosophy of SciHub was cultured in your mind.
Maybe it takes root to my early childhood. Well, the USSR was still there, and so there were a lot of kids' books, children's books from the Soviet times, and a lot of them played around with the idea of smart, witty guys fooling and cheating the rich guys and taking goods away from them. But the rich guys were always like, they were always presented as actually very mean and very greedy, and so the guys who managed to cheat them were presented, the characters that would cheat them were presented as heroes.
So I think it's the best use of children book. And yeah, so it is often very challenging to strike a balance between work and life, and it and it would be especially difficult for someone in your position. So what is your mantra behind striking a balance between the two?
Well, that's quite a difficult question. In fact, I have a lot of interests and I often get distracted onto them. So at some point I started to notice that I'm not managing to do a lot. So I've always used to, write down some ideas that would come to me, but recently I decided that I would start making actual plans for the day.
That calls for a to-do list, right? So when I started Kitchen Lab in my home, I have to convince a whole joint family of 21 people staying together. And it's quite painful initially to manage all the courage and convincing to make them understand how beneficial it is going to be for other people. So when you started your journey, how did you manage to convince people if you had to convince someone?
I guess the advantage of starting SciHub, of setting up SciHub, wasn't the fact that I didn't really need to run it by anyone, or I didn't really need to negotiate it with anyone. Had I needed to do this, I'm sure a lot of people would say it's impossible, that's a silly idea, and nothing would have come out of it. So I just got down to it and I made it on my own. And I think this is one of the key reasons why it actually exists and works currently. When I first started it, I ran it by, when I first started it, I got some really positive feedback at a special forum of people where we were discussing the project, and they were saying, they were thanking me a lot for it. However, later on this forum, I started to propose the idea that scientific publications have to be open access by default. So all the scientific journals should be open access. And to my surprise, I didn't get any support. In contrast, a guy started arguing with me and even laughing at this idea. At that point, there was this option. I could become a moderator of a certain topic on the forum. So that's what I did. And I banned the guy. But I was criticized for it by the forum moderators because they said I was limiting his freedom of speech.
That is interesting, and that is sad as well, because you are right. When for the first time when I said it, people thought that I'm going crazy, and and this is probably the worst thing I could ever do to my career.
So I remembered this one thing. Before I set up SciHub, I had this idea of starting an open access journal where Russian authors would send papers in Russian, and then they would then be translated into English and probably into other languages. So that would be this multi-language open access kind of journal. One reason why I thought this would be useful is because I know that Russian scientists are really vastly interested in publishing in English. However, not many of them are able to actually write a paper in English. However, when I posted this proposal, this idea on another forum, it was quite a scandal. I was banned later.
So do you think at some point you were just misunderstood, like your intentions were misunderstood?
In terms of being misunderstood, I think I've been constantly misunderstood in my life, even when we're talking about this earlier project that you mentioned about the neural interface. I was interested. I had this idea that using neural interfaces, we could link literally the brains of all people in the world into some sort of common network, common brain. And I did present this idea once at a conference. And, my hope was that I would be approached by many people and that we could assemble a big team to start working on it. But to my surprise, people expressed no interest in this.
That's sad. That's sad.
I think people are too scared to, take
New things.
When you started your journey, did you imagine it would impact so many researchers' lives?
Not really, actually, but this did happen at the very beginning. I was quite surprised that straight away the project became so popular with Russian scientists. However, I didn't really expect it to become popular all over the world. I had no plans of taking over the world with it.
I think everyone will be indebted to you for this forever. your project forever.
So what are your expectations from your users?
Of course, it would be great if all scientists could rise up and demand that free science and free access to scientific information, that it become totally legal, and that, you know, lawsuits would stop against my project.
With being famous, there comes a lot of rumors. So what is the most bizarre rumor you have ever heard about yourself?
Well, maybe it's that I'm somehow connected, that I'm some sort of a Russian spy. There's one more thing that I remember, and this is actually quite unpleasant. One thing I've read is that the real authors of the projects, the real founders of the project must have been killed, and they just put me forward as a face of a project, as a fake face of a project.
Oh my God. So you are presently a very successful computer programmer, but often what we achieve and pursue in life is not what we initially thought we would be doing. So if science didn't happen to you, how would your life have been? What would you have been doing?
I've already discussed with you on some sort of neurocomputer interfaces. However, I wasn't very successful in that. So there was a period of time after this when I was sort of floating in life, not really sure what to do next. I mean, to be honest, before SciHub, I had the idea that I would enter a PhD, preferably in the US, in the field of bioengineering, and I would work.
So considering everything that had happened, do you ever regret opening SciHub, or do you ever regret starting SciHub?
Of course not. I think it's the best thing that's happened to me in my life so far.
So did you get any mentor? Did you got any mentorship from anybody?
No, and maybe, you know, also when I was younger, I was somewhat shy, and it was difficult for me to keep a dialogue with any sort of a mentor. So no, I didn't have such a person in my life.
Do you mentor students, or do you take any classes or anything to teach?
No, I don't. Back at university, I took up a part-time job to teach students programming, and I didn't enjoy it at all. And that's when I decided, no, this is not my thing. I wouldn't do it ever.
Paywall definitely makes science restricted, but there are other factors too, which are hurdles in the way of scientific thinking and progress, such as language and racism. How can we remove these barriers, and what is your perspective on it?
I think the major obstacle at the moment is political. Our government, for instance, lays very little emphasis on science and pays very little attention. If we could create some sort of state of scientists, some sort of country of scientists, that would be awesome.
That's a brilliant idea. I think we should all shift to that and take the citizenship and like keep science apart.
So is there any particular reason for not taking the conventional way of protesting? Do you think what you have done is worthy of your whole career?
This is actually a good idea, because limiting access or locking access to scientific information violates human rights and violates certain articles of the UN Human Rights Convention, which says that everyone has the right to participate in scientific progress. I think the reason why I'm not doing that is that I'm really profane in legal issues and in legal matters. I know how to do programming. I'm good at that. This is why I went this way, took this path.
I think we should do things the way that we do best. Like we all have our own strengths and weaknesses, and we should do that way.
Lawsuits against SciHub are piling years after years, and no new articles are being added to SciHub, like at least in India. What's the way ahead?
Well, it is my hope that at least this latest lawsuit will be sorted and will be resolved, and that SciHub is going to win the lawsuit. And when that happens, we'll continue adding articles and updating it.
That's an amazing news. Several journals are gold open access, but the authors pay a hefty charge. So, do you think that such open access is okay as long as the readers can access article for free? Or are you concerned about the authors as well?
Well, I know that a lot of scientists would be strictly against moving into solely open access publishing, because the grants, the scope of grants and of scholarships that Russian scientists get, they are nowhere near what European or Western scientists get. So they're actually very small, and therefore no one would be ready to pay such enormous sums of money for publishing their work in an open journal or in an open access journal. However, in general, when we don't look at it, if we don't look at it in the current perspective, if we look at it from like on a more global scale, I think it is still better than the existing system. I think that if authors pay for publication, it is a lesser evil than the system that currently exists.
Yeah,
Right,
definitely
right.
it's less evil than the system that is currently existing. How is your science progressing?
Well, sadly, not that well, because I'm 32 and I haven't published any scientific articles of my own yet, any research papers. But I'm hoping to correct this within the next couple of years.
Okay,
Yeah, looking forward to that.
excited to see those.
So we've learned that you are very much fascinated by neuroscience, and it is something that excites me too, because I'm going to pursue my PhD in neuroscience in memory consolidation. So I would want to ask you, what are your questions in neuroscience?
One of the things that I'm really interested is qualia. If you don't know what that is, please do Google it. So basically, I recently read this paper, which was entitled "What It's Like to Be a Bat." Yeah. So what interests me is how we can get inside another creature's head and see and perceive the world the way this creature does. And I think this could be achieved via neural interfaces. So for example, it would be interesting for me to get inside the conscience of a bird and to see how it perceives, for example, the process of flying. And technically speaking, I'm interested in exploring how neuronal connections can help us physically achieve this.
Oh, that's fascinating. Actually, it's like, how does a blind man perceive colors, right? They do not know what red is or what blue is. But it would be really fascinating to really understand what is like, if we can if we can get the qualia from the person who is able to conceive it, and through some interface if we can like connect it to the person who cannot, that can help achieve a lot.
Another interesting question is, do artificial neural networks have any qualia? And if they are, we somehow connect to them and perceive them and feel them?
That's a beautiful question. So you have been an inspiration to many researchers across the globe. So what is your message to the upcoming researchers?
I think the message is you should always work on the things that you find interesting.
That's simple and very important.
I've always believed that there should be no schools and no universities, that just the large of knowledge should be available via the internet, and each person could choose how to educate themselves and what to learn.
That's wonderful. That's a very innovative idea of how things could be. If you know Rabindranath Tagore, one of the greatest poems from India, he was self-educated, and
he was homeschooled.
Very much.
So
yeah.
Вообще есть это. Ой.
So if you look at, people have started noticing recently that if you look at the biographies of the greatest minds of the present times, many of them have actually quit unis and dropped out of unis, such as Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, and theories have started arising that models actually make slaves out of people.
Right.
Yeah. So everybody faces different kind of failures in their whole career and in their life. So how do you deal with failures?
I don't think I have like some established certain particular way of dealing with failures. I can say something banal that, like, despite failures, you should always keep going, keep moving towards your goal. That's just the key message.
So we'll wrap up this interview with a last question, that what do you think about Kitchen Lab?
I think this is the future, and I think this is the way to move forward.
And thank you. That's the
Thank you
biggest
so much.
compliment I had ever got. Alexandra, when I mailed you, I never thought you were going to respond.
I don't know why a lot of people think that if they try to approach me, I won't respond. I try to respond to all the messages I get where people are proposing something specific, such as an interview or a podcast. I also get a lot of messages where people just contemplate certain questions, and that where they just they want to discuss certain philosophical or scientific issues with me. And honestly, I would so love to answer each of them. I find it really interesting, but sometimes I just don't have the time to reply to all of them.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
a lot.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Thanks a lot, Alexandra. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Maria, for helping us with this. And it was really great interacting, and this is like a dream come true.